I know. All right. Let's do this one. So we're going to the other side of the coin, not the preemie births. I gave you guys some dice. Hang tight to those. We're going to do those in a little bit. To answer Jay's question, which is fantastic.
Beautiful.
So those are custom, made in my garage.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll show you. Very, very fun. Yes, custom dice in Sean's garage. Lovingly handcrafted for you. So the dice won't help us with this, unfortunately. They'll help us with the next bit, which is what happens if you don't have a population. But anyway, this is the other side of the coin, which is, okay, now the baby's in too long, let's get him out. All right, we had this discussion when we were going to have Max, the idea of the problem with leaving a child in the womb too long. So, first of all, make sure you can see why this is a forwards problem. Go ahead and read it. Go ahead and read it.
We've got the values here. You don't have percentage. That's it.
And that's the key. You've been supplied a day. You've been supplied a contextual value, as Elena just said. 2 weeks. That's 14 days. So you actually have a number in the problem that is related to the average and standard deviations context unit. Very nice. And I asked you to find the probability, which is the same as a percentage. So that's why it's forwards. You start with a value and you turn it to a percentage. So if you compare and contrast it to the backwards problem started with the normal, went to a z-score, and then went to days. We, in this one, are going to start with days, go to a z-score, and then get a percentage. It's exactly backwards, including the process. So we'll do this over here. We'll do this on the induced problem. Induced labor. And the reason I'm interested in this one was I noticed right around the time we were thinking about having Max, we didn't know he was going to Max, having a kid, every woman in my neighborhood was being induced. Like every single woman in the neighborhood, up to that point, and Jenny's cringing a little bit. I thought it was weird too. So I said, okay, let's play with some numbers. What's the chance of an induced birth? Now, I'm not talking about the chances of the induced birth of the doctors who can go on his golf vacation. Now, I got to squeeze you in on Thursday because I'm taking off for Friday for Palm Beach. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like a natural pregnancy that goes too long and you got to pull the baby out before something bad happens. That's what I'm getting at here. So what's the chance of that happening? Let's find out. That's the whole point of this problem, okay? So we still have an average pregnancy length of 266 days. And we still have a standard deviation of 16 days. So let's figure it out. I like to always start with this curve. And this time we actually do have to start with this curve. We actually do have to start with this one because it's a forwards problem. So we're starting with the contextual curve of 266. Remember our discussion from before. If you go up and down 16, that's one standard deviation, right? It's one standard deviation. So if you go up 16, that's going to be 282, and then down to 250. Well, you'll notice something, friends. Where's the cutoff?
More than.
Yeah, look at where the cutoff for induced labor is. It's roughly here, isn't it? It's 14 days more than average, right? Exceeded her due date by 2 weeks. On average, that due date is 266 days. So 2 weeks out is 280 days. So this probability tells us what the chance of an induction is. What the chance of an induction is. Now you can tell me something about that. It's at least what? It's at least what? It's fairly high, isn't it? Well, let me ask you this. What percentage is that? I'm covering everything except above 282 days.
So 34.
Cut that in half, roughly 17%, right?
Uh-huh.
Roughly 16, 17%. So it's clearly more than that. That seems pretty high. 16% would be 1 in 6 pregnancies. That's a freaking lot. But this is even higher than that. Let's figure it out. Let's get it down to a 1%, to a percentage accuracy. So here we are, forwards problem. We have the x-score. We have to convert that to a z-score because we've got to get ourselves onto this curve over here. Wow, that's a nice wide ghost-like curve. A Pac-Man ghost. We got to get ourselves onto this curve. We got to get ourselves onto this curve, and we need the z-score. Well, it's not quite that far. It's more like here. We need that z-score. In order to find that z-score, we have to normalize the raw score, and that's where the other formula comes in. I think of the two, it's the least intuitive. I think the backwards reverse raw score computation is way more intuitive, as you guys have already pointed out. I think it's a little less intuitive based on our discussion on last Wednesday. You guys figured that formula out, but you didn't like it too much. And I'm almost positive it's because this one has subtraction and division, and the other one has addition and multiplication. And addition and multiplication are by definition nicer. They have properties that subtraction and division don't have. And I think that we have an intuitive gut feeling for that in our heads, because that would be a head feeling, not a gut feeling. Anyway, let's convert. To get the z-score we need, we take that raw score, dump the average, and divide by the standard deviation. Yes, that's 14 days, as we knew, because that's what 2 weeks is. That's 14 days. Over 16, that's 7/8. 7/8 is, I think 0.88. What 7/8 is it? 0.88, 0.875? 0.875, right? So, in other words, your z-score that you need is 0.875. Which, that makes sense, based on where I drew that one. It's below 1 standard deviation. A little bit below 1 standard deviation. So it's 7/8 of a standard deviation above average. 7/8 of a standard deviation. So you're not quite, you haven't quite pushed out to 1. You're just below that. So my question for you is, how much area is that? How much area? And this is, again, Stornoval comes to save the day. Otherwise, you got to use charts, and I don't want you guys using charts. Let's do some more probabilities. Yes. Is it forward or is it backward? Most definitely forward. Most definitely forward. Between left or right?
Right.
Yeah, let's go to the right. Left bound is that bad boy right there, 0.875. Yes. Here he comes. He's going to draw it for us. Make sure we drew it right. It looks pretty much exactly what it is. Look at that. About 9. And we said it was going to be more than 16 or 17%, and it is. It's close to 20%. So not only is it's like 1 in 5 pregnancies. 1 in 5 pregnancies. I'm going to say that again. 1 in 5 pregnancies. That seems weird. That seems off. I mean, wouldn't you think, this is my opinion, but wouldn't you think that an induced labor that happens naturally should be a rare event? You see what I'm getting at here? In other words, induction seems like a non-natural thing. It seems like we should be doing it pretty rarely. 1 in 5 seems pretty common. That's 20% of pregnancies. That seems to me to be happening too frequently. That's my opinion. It's my opinion. I would think it would be an outlier event, right? Something that happens less than 5% of the time. But here it is, according to this definition, happening 20% of the time. That seems strange. It seems like it's almost like 4 times happening too often. So again, my opinion. Jenny, go ahead.
And that was just for the 2 weeks over. I mean, because like,
Go ahead.
my doctor and my second child, my doctor wanted to induce me like the day after I was due.
The day after you were due.
Yeah.
Now,
Ridiculous.
here's the deal. No, well, it could be, or it could be the same, and here's why. All of these numbers are essentially saying you know when day 0 was.
Right.
And there's wiggle room on that side, right? When did conception happen? Well, okay, they have to go back and reverse engineer from hundreds of days away, or maybe a month or 2 away. So there's some wiggle room on that side, and even knowing the hour and not the day of when conception happened. So there is some wiggle room, but the day after, I mean, maybe he took account of the 2 weeks on the front side of it. Maybe, possibly. I'm trying to find a connection here.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe they just said, you're 1 day over, boom, let's go. Sometimes it's scheduling. Induction happens because of scheduling
I
sometimes.
think that's why.
It
I
could-
mean, it was supposed to be a. Now
could-
looking back, you know.
It could have been. It could have been. I don't want to. I don't want to, because I'm not a doctor. I don't want to call shots on that. But realize too, this isn't the doctor making the call on induction. This is the definition. Friends, 20% of pregnancies will go at least 2 weeks past due. That's what this says. And the only reason induction even comes in is because that was the cutoff for that was the starting point for induction. This tells us 20% of pregnancies, all pregnancies, will be at least 2 weeks over average. Well, that's again a high percentage. So it makes me question a couple things. Number one, the definition of when we should induce. Number two, maybe this 16 is too wide. Maybe that 16 should be more like 8 days or 10 days. Because if you knock that down to 8 or 10 days, all of a sudden you get the 68% in a much tighter range, and then this percentage shrinks considerably. So, again, there's a lot riding on that number, just like there's a lot riding on that number. So, Jenny, I don't have a good answer. As we often don't in statistics, we have more questions.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, I'd have to actually talk to your doctor about how to make. Sorry about that. The mood lady keeps kicking in while we're chit-chatting with each other. Yes. So are you seeing how the forwards is forwards and the backwards is the backwards? That's only Bill Cosby right now. I apologize. Jello pudding pops and the frickin'. So right. So this curve, x score to z score to area, area to z score to x score. Beautifully symmetric in how you attack them. The forwards and the backwards, like I said, are just names I made up to kind of give us a conversational way of attacking each one. Awesome? Good? Good. I'm going to mute the screen down for a sec. And I'm going to do also, not freeze. I'm going to start the video again too, because this is a good place to pause.